Good morning, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary people. Even though this video is closely related to the 8-ball pool video course that we published on Udemy, we believe it might be helpful to anyone involved in making video games, as it covers an important yet often overlooked aspect of game making: planning. I know, you probably don't want any of that and you just want to keep going with your respective projects, but in many cases, before you go anywhere, it's not a bad idea to figure out where you're going in the first place. And that is what we're going to talk about in this video. We will talk about game design in general and the design of our specific game that we've already made for our video course. Alright, I hope you're still with me, and let's get down to business. So, game design. Some of you might have heard that game design document is what you should do before everything else, that it's uber important. If you haven't heard anything about game design in general and about game design document in particular, here's what Wikipedia has to say about it. So basically, a game design document is just paperwork? Yes and no at the same time. While game design document is in fact used as a part of legal paperwork, this is the case when there are a lot of people and multiple parties involved in the production process. But it doesn't mean that you don't need a GDD if the entire development team is you alone, and the entire testing group is your dog and cat. One of the functions of a game design document is to guide you through the development process, which might take anywhere from a few weeks to a few years. We humans are very forgetful. We might get a great idea right before falling asleep, and the next morning we can't remember the idea. The only thing we remember is that it was great. So one reason why you need a game design document is basically not to forget what game you're making. You might be rolling your eyes now, how can I forget what game I'm making? The thing is, when you're in the process of making a game, it's super easy to stray away and end up creating something totally different. And different doesn't always mean good, it could just as well be total garbage. Another thing that happens quite often is game developers focus too much on non-essential game features because it might be fun working on those features, or because the essential features are simply harder to implement. So the idea of a GDD is the same as the idea of any other planning tool, to help you achieve your goals by focusing your efforts on what gets you closer to the goal. However, there is a problem with GDD and planning in general. Many understand that it's important, but few actually do it. And many of those few who do it quickly jump to the conclusion that it simply doesn't work, and they stop doing it. So what are some common scenarios that involve failed attempts to do planning? Scenario number 1. You simply don't know how to plan. Because you don't know how to plan, planning doesn't work for you. So you give up on planning before you learn how to do it. Scenario number 2. You keep planning even though it doesn't really work for you, and you do it just because others say that it works. But since you're convinced that it doesn't work for you, you never follow your plans, and this is why they don't work. And scenario number 3. You take planning very seriously. You make detailed plans, you do your best to follow those plans, and you adjust them when needed. But you never reflect on your planning, and you don't make attempts to improve it, so eventually you spiral down to scenario number 2. Alright, so how do we start planning? If you don't know how to start simple. Check how other people do it, get some references. Here's the version 1.05 of the GDD for the game Race and Chase that started the famous GTA game series. First of all, let's look at the table of contents to see how this GDD is structured. We can see that it has 10 chapters, and the question here is, what am I supposed to write in each chapter if I use the same structure? And the answer is, we don't have to use any particular structure or format. Alright, we have a reference, now what? Where do we start? If you don't know where to start anywhere. If you really don't know where to start from the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 8-ball pool game that we've already made and break it down. At this point, we'll just write down features, comments, everything mixed up using bullet points. Meaning we'll just start simple and we will do the structuring later. Also, at this point, we're just going to write for ourselves. Meaning we don't need to write in full sentences. Grammar and spelling don't matter. We can use words and abbreviations only we understand. At this point, we don't need to make sure that other people can read and understand our GDD. Did you say this is silly? Well, it certainly might seem so. I mean, how is this game design? See, one problem that you encounter as you try to do something you haven't done before is a lack of experience. Because you haven't done it before, you don't know what to look out for. The approach that I'm offering here is more like journaling rather than planning, but it could be the first step towards learning how to plan. Once you have a list of features and you know what every single one represents, it gives you a list of things that you might want to consider for your own project, which might help you get started. So here's a list of features of our 8-ball pool game. When I start the game, I see main menu that has 4 buttons: play, practice, like, and quit. An add banner at the bottom. The banner disappears when the game starts. There is a bar at the top that contains a turn indicator and balls display. There is a menu button on the left below the bar, cue stick controls on the right, that include a hit bar, an elevation button, and a spin button. Tapping on the elevation or spin buttons shows a separate panel in the center of the screen to adjust elevation or spin. There is an animated handle for moving the cue ball. Tapping on the table aims the cue stick at the tap point. Swiping on the screen rotates the cue stick. So is this it, you say? How is it going to help you learn planning? Well, first of all, this list is incomplete, and if you continue writing down all the features of the game, you will end up with something like this. Which you can then make a little more readable and turn into something like this, which looks more like a legit document. Again, the idea is that we're not really making a game design document here, but rather learn how to make it by going backwards. We first break down an already existing game into features and then turn the result into a readable document. And by doing so, we become more familiar with making game design documents in general, which might help us in our future projects. And this is the approach that we take in our video course that you can find on Udemy. The link is in the video description. Now, before I sign off, there's one thing that I'd like to mention. It might seem super obvious, but let me say it anyways. If you decide to give this approach a shot, it might be better to write down features of a game similar to what you are trying to make. So if you want to make a shooting game, journaling an 8-ball pool game might not be very helpful. Anyways, I hope this was convincing enough to set you on a path to effective planning, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!